Hello, in this short video I'm going to walk you through the Cloud Secure Web Gateway API endpoints with a few examples. So first of all, to get to the reference document, you go to techdocs.broadcom.com and you see the folder structure that I am in at the moment here at the top. So you go to Symantec Security Software, Web and Network Security, Cloud Secure Web Gateway, Cloud SWG API Reference, and then inside that, as you can see, these folders here, I am inside About Cloud SWG API Authentication. So that's the first point, to authenticate. This document kind of briefly talks about how to get the API keys. You've got a nice screenshot here. So I have already logged on to my WSS tenant here, and I go to Account Configuration, API Credentials, and this is where you create a new API user and API password. The authentication method for all the Cloud SWG API endpoints is via authorization header using basic directive. So this username colon this password must be base64 encoded and sent with the authorization header basic directive. So once you have got the credentials created here, you then take and make sure you save them, because once you create them, they disappear. So you won't be able to go inside them here and see what that password was. Just to give you an example, I save this and I must choose at least one access. So of course, forgot to mention that for our use case, I'm going to be going into the policy list management. That's what I'm going to be using the API key for. So as you can see, this has appeared here, right? And there is no way for me to kind of have a look at what the password was. I can see the user, but I can't see the password. There's no way for me to retrieve that. And I might as well delete it because I'm not using it. Okay, now you saw that I have selected there. So this is the one that I'm using for my demo, policy list management. So what are policy lists? So if we go now back to our documentation and we look, need to go to this one and policy lists. So these are this table here lists the various type of object lists or containers that you can manage through API. By manage, I mean create, delete, update. And based on your type of a tenant, your Cloud SWG tenant, you may not be able to use all of these lists. For example, if you have got a Universal Policy Enforcement tenant, or UPE, which means that you manage your policy from your on-premise management center, like I am here in this WSS tenant, and here I can download the policy that I manage on management center. In that case, some of these lists are not manageable through the API, and they are all managed, of course, from management center. So if you look on the column on the right for UPE, for example, of the use case of a URL list, a block list or allow list, that endpoint is not available for UPE tenant. So if I now go to my my WSS tenant, and I just need to find the object. Here we go, object library and the policy. So with my UPE tenant, these are the types of lists that are supported. As you can see, I have already got two there. The bottom one I created here. So I go new, and I just follow the basic wizard, and I created a user list called the domain users. Now this one was actually created through the API. So let's now jump to the API demo. I'm going to quickly go through what my code does so that you can take this, understand how it works, and you can write your own client or tweak whatever client you are using based on this. So API is basically just a HTTP client and server, that's it. There's nothing different about it. It's TCP socket, after TCP socket SSL handshake, after SSL handshake HTTP headers. You have to do the authentication first, and then you are exchanging JSON payloads. So key value pairs, basically. Just to show you what that is, what I mean is there's two different variables here that are examples of key value pairs. That's the key name, it's the value, a key name, value. It's a typical data structure of a JSON file. Since I use Python, in Python world these are called dictionaries. Now I've got three different examples here in this code. I've got an example to read all the policy lists. I've got an example to add a policy list, and I've got an example of delete a policy list. But let's go very quickly through the code. I'm being too lazy here in my demo, so I have hard-coded my username and password for my tenant here into the code. As you can see, I have commented out the two lines where I'm actually asking for the username and password. So the usernames and passwords, I've got these sort of like GUID type. Here I am doing I'm taking the user variable, I'm sticking a colon after it, and then I'm putting a password there. At this moment they are still in a string form, and then I encode them. Okay, once they are encoded, I return that string in this function, and that function is going to become a input argument for my class for the authentication method in my code. So the class I call cloud SWG API. I've got a bunch of variables here that I created with the constructor. One of them is kind of static, doesn't have an input argument, and that's of course the portal.threadpath.com, which is the endpoint that you must be calling. Okay, and the other arguments here, I've got this, that will be the base64 encoded credentials. Then I've got the URI of the endpoint, okay, that you call in, because the URI is going to differentiate based on what you're doing. Are you doing delete? Are you doing put? Are you doing post? Are you doing get? Are you doing policy types, policy lists, and so on, so on. And then here I just, I create a TCP socket using Python sockets. Then I then wrap it with SSL. This method is defined here. Just again, very quick function to wrap that open TCP socket with SSL. Once I'm done with the SSL, as you can see here, I'm calling this API method. And that API method takes as a input argument the SSL wrap socket. And here I am defining my, I've got three methods in my code. I've got the get method, I've got the post method, and I've got the delete. And this translates to the three examples that I said that I have here. Okay, so very quickly I detect here what the method is with these three ifs, and then I've got it all within a try and exempt block, of course, to catch any errors on TCP or SSL layer or HTTP layer. And here I have got my authentication as well as the endpoint. So you don't have to wait for so you don't have to achieve the MPI call with 2 rounds, meaning that you send first some get and you wait for the API to come back with 401 www-authenticate header, and then you send that authorization header with the endpoint. You do it all in one call. Okay, so here I am I am going to be getting all the policy lists that I have, and at the same time I'm doing the authorization. So there's no sense of I authenticate first, and once I'm authorized I get some JSession ID cookie, and then I use that. And basically here I just send this, right, and here I am chunking the response that I get back through that TCP socket. I combine it in this response message, and then I've got a little parser here that's going to nicely parse that those bytes from TCP payloads, and it's going to kind of print the headers one per line, and then they payload. And I do the same thing with a post. As you can see, I put both the methods and the URI and the authentication, everything into variables. Here, of course, because I'm doing a post. So if you go back to the headers, what is different is that these are the minimum 3 headers that you should include in any GET call. You don't need any more. But when it comes to post, of course, you need to include the minimum of these 2. So you need to specify that the content type is application JSON, and you need to then, of course, specify the content length. I'm just here, getting the length of my JSON data, and JSON data was a string that I have to here dump with JSON dumps method. So it is the correct format when it's serialized and sent on the wire over the TCP socket to the backend. Of course, you need to add the 4 bytes here, the 2 RN sequences here at the end of the file, these 4, because the payload length starts calculating from this point. So is your entire length of that dictionary, that JSON key value per file, follow always by 4 bytes for the RN sequence, so our server knows where the file starts and where the file ends. And again, here I am actually sending this on the wire, and here I'm just chunking the responses again, and I use the same parser to print it all out nicely. And for delete, so again, you don't need to be including the content type, content length, right? Because you are not actually posting any data. It's kind of like get, but the delete method is understood by the API server that it needs to delete something, providing you give it the correct URI, which needs to include at the end the ID of the object that you want to delete, but we're going to look at it in a second. And that's it really. Here is the parser, what it does, very easy. Now then I call the credentials function, so I get the base64 encoded credentials, and then I create 1, 2, 3 instances of a classes here. Now the first one, the URI is this, I am posting, and as you can see I'm doing this create empty list, which is this object. So notice that the name is API created. If I go back to the tenant, that's how I created this object. And then I'm doing a list with this call. It's a get, and I'm just getting all of the lists. Here I am doing a delete of that specific list. Notice that the only difference here is that I'm using the ID at the end. And here I'm doing the list again. So this exercise will create something, it will list it, it will delete it, and it will list it again. So the difference in the output is that in this list I get 2 objects, in this I get only 1. This code is actually not going to complete the delete correctly because I have hard coded here the ID, and the ID is of course always generated when you create a new object. So what I'm going to have to do is run these ones, then observe on a screen what the value is, and then change this and then run it again, and then it is going to work fine. Of course, for your use case, you could create another parser. So this is what the payload will look like from the API side. It's going to be a list like this that has got one value, and it's got the JSON file or the key value pair file inside, and here is the ID. So you need a very simple parser here so this is one user object. Notice that's the domain user one, and this is the API created one. So both of them. So in fact, it's a list of two. So there's first, so this is index 0 in the list, and this is index 1 in the list. And you can create a simple parser that's going to pass through this list, pass through the key value pairs, find the IDs, I don't know, and then log them in some file, do something with them, run some call, and so on and so on. So let's quickly run this. So I'm gonna delete what I have here, and I'm gonna run this. There it goes. So there are the calls. So let's take it from the top. Okay, first one with the post. Okay, notice I got 400 back, and the API endpoint does a good job at listing why. So here I got 400 back. Message is bad request. Right, and then it says list creation failed. List API created, that's the name of it, already exists. Okay, so nothing has actually gone wrong here. The server is doing the right thing. It's just letting me know that I tried to create a new list with the same name as an existing one. Therefore, it has failed. If you actually go back to the documentation, it does a very good job. If you go to this particular path here at the top, you get to see all the different methods and the endpoints, the structures of the JSON files, the content type that you have to use, which is application JSON, and the different responses and what they mean. So everything you actually need is already in this document. Now if I jump back to the code, so okay, that one failed, but it's good. Then we did a get. In this get we got actually back to 100 okay, because this is just to list all the objects, and we have listed them. We have got two. We've got domain users and we've got API created with these two IDs. And then I'm doing another call. I'm doing here the delete call. The delete call failed with 404. Why? And this is because if you look at, I've got IDs ending with 095 and 947, and my code was trying to delete 945, which doesn't exist, so I got 404 back. So again, there is nothing wrong. Now, because I do know that the one I want to delete is this one, I take this ID, I copy it, I dump it in here, and I save my code. Let's finish passing through this. So, and the last one again is the same call as the previous get, which is just list all that's there. Now I'm going to rerun this. I saved it. Here is the correct ID for that API created list. I ran this, and again the first one is 400 because I tried to create something that already exists. Second one, I got 400 here, already exists. 200, list them, there's the ID, and then I got 200 OK on a delete. What does 200 OK on a delete means? If we go down to delete, there we go. 200 means it got deleted. Okay, if I go here and I do a refresh, I should no longer see that API created list. As you can see, it is gone. Going back to my code, so the last get of lists has now got only one object. While as before, when I ran it here at the top, here is the get, I had two. Right? If I now rerun this one more time, the post is no longer going to get 400 error because it's not a duplicate. It will get created. And here we go. It's running. And for some reason, I think it didn't run correctly. Let's do that again. Not sure what's going on with my Python interpreter at this point. It's refusing to run. Interesting. Okay, let's park this. We're kind of done with the demo anyway. I hope you have got a good understanding now of how it works. I'm gonna, okay, I actually got an error on the first one. So my try exam call, it looks like that got printed on the first call, so something's gone wrong here with the first try, but actually looking at it, I got 200 OK back, so I'm not sure what has happened there. Maybe something with my network. But here, as you can see, it's the post. The post has failed. The post call failed. Let's have a look why. I wonder if I need to activate this guy first. And let's run this again. Yep, and there you go. So if I go up now, post, I got now 201. Okay, if I now look at the list, it is back, it is created. Of course, it got created with new ID. And what does 201 means? I mean, we know it got created already, but let's check the documentation. So we are looking at post, and post is here. 201 means it got created. So you could, add in your code a status code parser as well and start printing these out, or changing these based on what the response code is. But everything you need is here. If I minimize these, and one last thing I wanted to point it out is the differences between put and post. So post creates a new object. You cannot use post to maintain existing lists. You have to use put for that. So with put, you replace the content of existing object. So again, be careful when you do that. When you do a put, it means that you always have to include what was there and then minus or plus the delta. If you want to remove something from some list, you have to have the entire content minus that. If you want to add something, you have to have the entire content that was there before plus the new object. And that concludes the demo. Thank you.